So moving on from that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about catching Spanish mackerel. Does anybody here care about catching Spanish mackerel? I like catching them, and there's certain times of the year when I really get fired up about catching Spanish, and that's the 1st of May and the last week of April. That's when you're going to find your big, jumbo, giant Spanish mackerel. Your wall hanger, king of the Spanish, is going to be the first ones to come around these frying pan shoals down here and make it up to Carolina Beach. And they're going to be charging up here. And that's going to be when the water temperature is about 66 degrees. I've seen them as cool as 66. I've come out this inlet. And what you got to do basically is, if you want to catch a giant, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that there's going to be giants on Sheep's Head Rock. And that's off of Fort Fisher near the museum, the aquarium. Right out in that area in front of the ocean, and look on any chart. Sheep's Head Rock. It's an area close to the beach, 7 miles south of Carolina Beach, where these huge outcrops of rock come up in like 40 foot of water. Some of them come up to nearly 7, 8 feet at lower water to the surface. You don't have to worry about hitting them in your boat, but you do if there's some groundswell. Even if it looks calm some days, a wave will pop up on one of those humps and try to break. But that is the place. And every year I get fired up about catching the biggest, baddest Spanish of the year. And I'm not kidding you, there's some big dogs down there. My personal biggest is 8'6", but I've seen them up to 10 pounds down there. If you ever want to catch a citation, this is when you go, and you can do it until about the middle of May. But about that time, all the smaller ones catch up with them, and they get blended and mixed all together. But when you first get down there for the last week of April, first couple weeks of May, they're going to be piled up. Now, you'll come out Carolina Beach Inlet, and you'll run down this beach, and you'll be like, this water's 66 degrees. I ain't seen a fish jump. I haven't seen a bird one. But when you come within about a half a mile of that rock, you're going to see some activity. You're going to see some birds flying, and the bait's there, and the fish are going to be busted. You're going to start seeing Spanish jumping, and they love it down there. That time of year is the best time for the big Spanish. And there's a couple different things that you can catch them on. Now, in ways, if you get down there and it's a bluebird calm day and it's just as glassy as it can be, they're going most likely early in the morning. And I will say this, the bite is going to be early. It's going to be over by 10 or so in the morning. So you need to get down there as quick as you can, early in the morning. Don't waste your time trying to do anything with live baiting for them in the spring, because it's going to be a lot of trouble trying to find the right size baits in the spring to do that with, and they readily will take artificials. Now, a good old gotcha plug, everybody's probably seen one of these. This is a Spanish catching tool from way back. These plugs were invented around our area, from what I understand, some long time ago. But the gotcha plug is a standby for any person that's fished for Spanish mackerel and cast, and I'm talking about casting to them. And I've found they make a lot of different varieties. They make these with white plastic bodies, make them with metallic bodies. My favorite is the old gold one. Skinny gold guy here with these gold trebles. They will eat this thing up. Now, when you pull up the Sheep's Head Rock, you're going to be like, all right, we are here. I see some activity. If you do see fish jumping, what you need to do is get yourself in a position where you can get the boat into neutral, have a casting jig ready, and be able to fire at these fish. But don't just throw anywhere. Wait till you see a really great big one jump. Because you'll see some jump, you'll be like, oh shit, that's a big one. When you see the one that's huge jump, you throw your plug and try to land as closely to that splash where he landed as possible. And when these lures, the gotchas, hit the water, you close the bail, you instantly start working it. Because it sinks quick, but you want it to stay on the top. So work it quick. Close the bail, and every time you jerk it, this plug will swing, sway to sway, a lot, side to side, and sway like that. So every time you snatch it, you go so, 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 and work it really quick. This lure is going to be dancing back and forth, and you'll see the Spanish mackerel literally chasing circles around, trying to eat it on the way back to the boat. And if you slow down, they're going to just turn off and leave. So you'll be like, I need to slow down, and then you'll find that all out when you use them. Now, they will eat the gotcha plug, and that's something that I would say, if you go down there to catch those big Spanish mackerel, don't go down there with your 25-pound leader. You need to step it up to 30 or 40-pound leader for those Spanish, because they will cut you off all day long on these plugs. And they're not that cheap. So when you go, you need to take about a half dozen of them at least with you. And you need to take some 40-pound fluorocarbon or some 30. Start with the 30, try to get the bites, and then if you get bit off a whole bunch, you may have to step up to 40. The line-to-line connection you want to use is with that knot. You don't want to show up with a swivel on there, but they will try to eat that swivel and they'll cut you off like crazy. The line-to-line connection with a nice long piece of leader, and this gotcha plug, and the silver ones work good. They make the one with the little bucktail out the back. I seem to like this one the very best. Okay, an orange or yellow head with that gold body with the gold hooks. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about casting jigs like this. There's a whole bunch of different jigs that look like this, okay? And they work good for Spanish. They work good for Atlantic bonitas. They work good for gray trout. So, like I was telling you earlier, some of these lures, like this is a gray trout. Most people like to use this for gray trout. But there's a lot of times when a big old, like a heavier casting jig, but something that still also imitates the size of minnow that the fish are after, something about this size, works really well too. You can cast it a long ways. It doesn't have as many hooks to deal with when it gets to Spanish in the boat and you're trying to get them off without making a super huge mess. It comes off the hooks a little bit easier, and you can also take and put one single hook on the back of this spoons, and they work really good for when you're throwing and reeling it to Spanish. So with these, instead of the jerking action, you want to just take these things, and they will throw a long ways. You can throw a country mile with these things in different sizes. Like this is like a 1.5, but you know, they make smaller ones, and even the halves and quarters will still go a long ways because they're really aerodynamic. And they're easier to use. You throw them and just start winding as fast as you can and skip them on the surface. If you find that you get deeper, you're going to catch a bunch of bluefish because they don't, once they get down a little lower, the Spanish will leave it alone. You'll catch blues or stuff less desirable, closer to the bottom. And if you want to catch blues, you'll catch them all day long on these casting jigs. Now, these same casting jigs are going to also work good for Atlantic bonitas. But anyway, with large Spanish mackerel, you know, the time to catch one is really soon. Get yourself set up. You can also go down there, once you've been casting at them all morning, say, you know, you're still down there, it's 10 or 11 in the morning, the fish have stopped jumping, they're not surfacing. You want to do some trolling, there's 2 different ways, and you can catch this Spanish trolling. And, you know, and everybody that fishes around here should have a good old Clark spoon planer rod set up like this that they keep dedicated to Spanish mackerel fishing all summer long, and from when they get here in May all the way to the end. And I have a couple that these are just working rods for me. They get beat up, they get real dirty, but these, you know, this rod is a dedicated Spanish mackerel rod. Now you can take, you put your Clark spoon, this is this lure right here, and most people have probably seen, they've been catching Spanish way before I was born on these things. Clark spoon right here. You tie it to a piece of leader, and it's a 25-pound test leader, and I like to make that leader 4 arm pulls long. So you take, pull it out 4 times. 25 feet roughly is what you're going to have. Connect it to a planer. And a planer is this. The planer is something you troll behind your boat that runs through the water like this. Okay? When it gets hit, it straightens out. It creates a whole lot less resistance and it rises to the surface. You don't even have to take this rod out of the water. When you see your planers up, stand up to it, crank, 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 and crank your planer. I tell people, I said, crank that planer all the way to right there. I can get another guide, but I don't want you getting it busted in the head with a swinging planer. You can stop by the tackle shop on the way home, $4, they'll fix your guide. Crank this thing up close to your rod tip so nobody gets hurt by it swinging. But once you got this rod in the holder, a 4 or 5 or 6-year-old little child can walk up, crank this spoon and planer to the boat. It's a great way to fish with kids. They're going to get it. It's quick action. It's easy to do, and you know you can use this all summer long. But it will also work when those jumbo Spanish are down there. Say they quit jumping, you know, whatever. You want to pick up the pace, do a little trolling. It'll work. Now you can use the spoon and planer combo, and the way I store my spoon and planer combo for my Spanish mackerel fishing, and you see people riding around with their planers rolled all the way up there, halfway down the rod, just beating the guides off of it. Best way to do it is keep it down here on your patty. When you get done fishing for today, drop your rod upside down, pull this down here, and wrap the reel with your leader, like this. Because in the morning when you the next day you're fishing with this thing, you simply just throw it right off the side of a spool like you're throwing off a bottle or something. It rolls right out, goes out into the water. It keeps it organized and tight and clean, and then you just hook it right back on your planer or somewhere close by there. Keeps everything close together, and it doesn't let your planer beat up your rod. You got it ready for the next time. Do a good spray, inspect your leader from time to time for teeth marks, but then you're good. That lasts you all summer. That'll also catch them big Spanish, but I prefer to catch them on the light tackle rods. You can also troll these same Yozuris, these deep diving X-Wraps, these same colored white and chartreuse and pink. Those same plugs that you bought to striper fish this winter, they're going to work really well for trolling behind this little lighter setup that I showed you earlier. With one of those Yozuris tied on, you can troll circles around Sheep's Head Rock with those deep diving Yozuris on. Don't go right over the main big humps, but 10 and 12 foot of water all around, just pulling them. You can pull them almost as fast as the spoons. you're going to get a lot of bites. I find that in the springtime, that little Clark spoon, the baits they're eating in the spring are bigger. There's some nice big silver sides and bigger glass minnows that they will be trying to eat. And that this bigger, this size plug, they'll eat stuff like that because there's a lot of baits that size there at the time. Okay, so if you want to catch a citation, now's the time coming to do that, you know, the last of April.